flatland like a man on the run, riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
What's up, guys? Brad Chappell back at the Crappie Expo in Birmingham, Alabama, Sweet Home, Alabama. I guess that's going to be my saying for this series of podcasts because we're here in Alabama, beautiful state. Birmingham has been beautiful, so much to do, so many great places to eat as well, and we have taken advantage of that. I know I have. I know Shane has.
Absolutely, man. We haven't went anywhere this week that hadn't been just awesome.
The food's been great. People's been great in the area, so definitely appreciate the city of Birmingham for bringing us in here, and we've had a great time, but I'm going to let these guys do a little introductions to themselves, and I'll kick out the topic for today, which is a really fun one for me. So go ahead, Shane.
Hey, I'm Shane with Catch the Fever Outdoors and Yak and Leech Crappie Guides. I work with Catch the Fever with the products, but also angler with the guides. I guide full-time on High Rock Lake in North Carolina. I've been doing it for several years now, fishing some of the trails, having fun, hanging out with Brad, but yeah, man, just enjoying being in the industry.
That's right. I mean, the crappie fishing industry is a brotherhood, and I think of both of these guys sitting next to me as some of my crappie fishing brothers. And this guy, he's kind of been behind the scenes, but don't let him fool you. He knows what he's doing.
I've heard stories about that guy.
He's good.
No, don't lie to people. But yeah, my name's David McWilliams. I'm with Lou's, Strike King, Wally, and I mainly fish the Magnolia Crappie Club. I have fished some Crappie Masters. I fished the Expo and dipped into the NCL a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, David, we've been fishing together when it comes to Magnolia Crappie Club for years, and this subject is kind of what I'm known for when it comes into the crappie fishing industry, and it's long line trolling. And I get this question asked, when do you start long line trolling? And especially before live sonar came about, that's what we did every day. I mean, it wasn't a particular time that we started or stopped. I know David has pulled jigs forever, just like I have. Shane come over and learned how to pull jigs with me years ago, and he picked it up and ran with it. But I think, especially where you're from, Shane, that's really, in my mindset, where long lining came from.
Yeah, so we've been, years ago, I've pulled jigs. We've done it, and, several years ago, probably 9 years ago, we went out, me and my fish partner Noah went out, and we wanted to learn. That was the whole purpose, is how to figure this out, how to master it, and get better at it.
Yeah.
And, man, you can do it any time of year.
Yeah.
You just got to be willing to put in, cover water. It helps you on learning so much more just doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think about long line and the benefits of it, and we both can kind of tell each of our opinions and our takes on some of the benefits of long line trolling, but, to me, is one, you can fish it in a lot of conditions. And we would really look forward to bad conditions to pull jigs.
Absolutely.
Rough water and wind.
Rough water, wind, before live sonar, and everybody spider rig pretty much fishing tournaments, and I would be really chomping at a bit. I'm hoping it's blowing 20 to 40.
You want that boat to bounce for them.
I want that. Difficult conditions to keep those poles moving. But David, kind of could tell, what's your take on a good time to long line?
Well, myself, I mean, there's been tournament years with Magnolia that I have done nothing but from start to in August to end all the way through the winter months, long line every tournament.
Every tournament.
Every tournament I've long lined the winter, spring, fall, spawn.
Yeah.
You just got to adjust and get in the water column.
Yeah, and that's the main thing when it comes to this. If once you kind of identify the water column, those suspended fish, and I mean, you can pull jigs over brush piles and such just as well.
Absolutely.
But dialing in that presentation of that bait. But what's your favorite speed to pull, David?
I'm going to say I always try to go fast as I could.
Right.
But starting out, when I first was learning it, I was 0.8, 0.9, but as I got into doing it and tournament fishing with it, I'm going to start out at anywhere from 1 to 1.2.
Yeah.
That's my starting point. And if I can make it go faster, put heavier jigs, go faster, I'm going to keep going until I quit catching them back off.
Right. You know, both of you guys, I want you kind of, somebody's listening right now and they're wanting to get into long lining. And like I said, the benefits to me is you can fish it in a variation as far as weather conditions. Really still, you know, you think fish spooky, long lining comes into play. The rough water, long lining's fine with. And like I said, I would actually look forward to rough conditions.
Yep.
So that people, you know, it doesn't affect the bait presentation.
Exactly.
But once you started long lining, how did you learn to do it?
So a lot of mine was trial and error. It was, I went out, I figured out what pole, I took a 10-foot rod, cut the hook off of it with the jig head, just clipped just enough where it wouldn't hang, and I started riding over points. I wanted to figure out where my 16th, where my 8th. You know, we've got the depth charts and all that stuff, but I wanted to figure out how my boat pulled, the way my setup worked, to where I knew that I could change my speed or change that jig or have that line size and knew where it was at, where I could make a change fast.
Right.
Because if you're trolling, you're working 10 foot of water, and all of a sudden you figure out you got to get shallow, you need to know what you're doing and how to change real quick. So it's just trial and error. I'd run those points till it bumped, then I'd speed up. I run mine from point, I'd figure out where 16th would go from 0.7, then I figure out where 16th would hit at running 1.1.
Yeah.
So I could really dial in where I needed to be once I seen the fish move up or down.
I think that's kind of what's intimidated, especially years ago, intimidated a lot of people to pull jigs for the simple fact it wasn't a definite chart or something definite that controlled those depths of these jigs. And, you know, I've got a chart in my mind that's really good, but it's based out of my boat, my line setup, the angle of the poles on the rod holders, and even bait styles. They determine how deep every one of these jigs are being pulled. And it, you know, in reality, we've kind of learned that fish are mixed in the water column and feeding them in different columns. But I know, you know, David's called me and I've called him, all right, what you pulling, David? And he'll say, all right, I'm pulling 1/16, 1.2. And that kind of gives me a really good idea. All right, he's probably fishing about 8 to 12 foot deep, you know, and in that water column mixture. And I could get in there really easy. But, you know, how do you take somebody learning and explain to them how to long line in your mind, David?
Similar to what he was saying is how I learned was, which I didn't do it with the pole, stick it in the water, the points. I got on my depth finder and say 10 foot flat, and I kept going till I knew what was bumping the bottom, and that's how I kind of figured out what jigs to pull, and I mean where I know where the jigs would be. But far as if somebody was going to start out long lining, of course you can do it with the foot control trolling motor, but you need one with the remote for one, and which you can pull off the side of the boat. I pull off the back of the boat, and I guess the number one thing is if you're not scared to lose some bait. Because I've been days where I've lost 120, 130 jig heads, and then I've had to actually put spool line on poles in a day. But that's just part of it. You can't get frustrated with it.
I mean, that's the thing is, and I want to know that both of you guys, you kind of touched on it. I want to put as much detail into this for somebody out there that's wanting to get into this can take in and put it in their boat. But what size pound test are you using, and kind of how do you think about line? Even
the
braid
line
or
that
whatever?
I've never pulled braid. Now, another subject, crankbaits is all braid, but far as long lining, nothing but 6 pound line.
Yeah.
Nothing but 6 pound. And I always used the 6 pound Mr. Crappie.
Mm-hmm.
I had good luck with it, and it really wasn't expensive, and I would swap line on every pole before every tournament. I mean, I wasn't spending a whole lot of money on line because I knew I was going to strip it before every time I go fishing.
What about high vis?
I use the high vis yellow.
Why would you use high vis?
It's mainly whenever you're guiding these fish to the boat, you can see your line and guide them in and actually cast, and so you can see where your lines are and cast back in between them.
Shane, what about you when it comes to line? How you?
I agree 100%. I run 6 pound line on everything I got. I run slime line products, and I run high vis green and high vis orange. If you get on the back of my boat, every other rod's a different color. So that way, when we're bringing stuff in, or if we get, everybody knows your long line, you're going to tangle
It's
up.
gonna be tangled.
It's going to fish, you're going to run, customers or whatever going to pull lines, but it's easier to untangle as we get into it. But 6 pound line, I love because it works anywhere, and I know that line what is dragging through the water.
That's right. And I agree exactly with both of these guys when it comes to line size. I've used every line out there, through the years. And 6 pound test, you might say, well, why don't you use 10 pound? That's going to pull different than a 6 pound test. It's going to pull higher in the water column. It has a little bit more diameter. Now, I've been in situations that I wanted to go extremely shallow, and then we would put on heavy line to get higher in that water column, even deeper.
Deeper, which, you're talking about swapping line. I never swap line. I would swap heads. I mean, and even when I say swap heads, I would even go into pouring out of 10 to get them lighter.
That's true. I haven't thought. I don't know if we've ever mentioned that. Well, we've done it.
Yeah, we've done it. I mean, in fact, I've still got a bunch of 10 and still got molds to pour them, and that's how you pull in the spawn. That's how I pull in the spawn when I was doing it with 10 heads.
Explain to me, why would you pull? And we're talking about lead jig heads that we normally pull whenever we're long lining, and he's pouring 10 into jig molds, and why?
The 10 weighs half of what lead weighs. So if I'm pouring a 1/32 in lead, or if I'm pouring, say, an 1/8 ounce head in lead, it's actually going to weigh a 1/16, but have the same body size, same size as the 1/8 ounce head.
Nice profile change.
Yeah, right.
Profile, and also the big benefit was, in my mindset, was I wanted that bigger hook. I always long lining, I wanted to use the biggest hook as possible for that size jig head. And a lot of times we use those 10 molds and poured them for the simple fact we could put, say, a number 2 hook and a 1/16. And that's just about impossible once you go down in size to use that bigger hook.
And I've actually modified the molds. I run mainly a 1/0 hook in everything from a 32nd all the way up.
Yeah.
A 1/0 hook.
Why do you want a bigger hook?
I don't want them to get away. If they bite it, I want it to stick them.
Yeah. And the thought process is, a bigger hook, a fish comes up and he grabs it, it's more than likely that to hook him easier compared to a small hook traveling at speeds.
Yep, absolutely.
And my typical long lining speed is 1.2. I like going 1.4 whenever I can. Just like David said earlier, is I want to cover as much water as I possibly can and continue catching fish. So if I can cover another 1/4 mile in 2 hours by going a little bit faster, more than likely that's a few more fish in the boat.
Absolutely.
And whether have clients in the back of the boat, fishing tournaments, or even have myself on a boat, we all get in a boat to catch fish.
Oh yeah.
If I want to ride around the lake, I'm gonna get in a pontoon, or I would have a pontoon to do that. But whenever I'm pulling jigs, I'm wanting to catch as many fish as possible. But the next step to learning this technique comes into turning. How do you go about turning a boat when you have jigs behind you, Dave?
Well, it just depends on if you can make a big long turn, I'll do it. But a lot of times, if I'm trying to get back on an area where fish are, like, say, on a ledge that I'm following, I'll roll them up, turn around, and throw them right back out.
Yeah, that was big in tournaments for sure.
Oh, yeah. You had to get back on the fish. You couldn't leave them. Doing this part of it, somebody be right behind you in a second.
Yeah. And a lot of times what happened in the tournament side of the world was if we come through an area and they saw us catching fish,
they just cover your area
They
up.
would cover
your area up.
Your spider rigs would move straight in on top of that ledge.
And what was really fun about longline tournaments years ago was you could just about pull boats in different sections of the lake once they see you catch fish. So even if you had in mind, hey, there's big fish in this area of the lake, but there's just keepers on this other side, well, you could really go over, and it's kind of a trick of the trade when it comes to tournaments. You'd go to that other area and make sure everybody that was around you see you catching fish to pull them over there before you could get back to those big fish. So it's very fun the different strategies that went into play when it came to longlining. But the thing is, I think it kept so many people from it because they didn't have a book that showed them exactly how to do this. And, you know, to me, whenever I wanted to learn a jig, whether it's a curly tail, straight tail, how I wanted to really break down, kind of like Shane said, how deep that jig was being pulled through the water column would be, I would look at the contours and say, all right, this is an 8-foot flat, kind of like David was saying as well. Look at an 8-foot flat. I'm going to keep pulling them until I see them dragging or bumping. And what we mean by that bait is actually dragging the bottom. And what your poles do at that point is they kind of bounce backwards. They have like a load on them. Otherwise, whenever you're pulling jigs and they're suspended above the bottom, your pole's not sitting still. It's still going to have a little bit of vibration just because of the blades and the jig bodies itself. But once you hit the bottom, your poles will start loading up. They will start bouncing and bumping. That tells you at that point that bait is on the bottom. And say if you're pulling 1 mile an hour, 2 1/8, and you're going in 10 foot of water, and all of a sudden you see those poles start dragging, well, automatically, I'm going to bump up the speed first off.
That's right. First off, I'm going to bump up the
I'm going to bump up that speed. Go to 1.2, and all of a sudden they're not bumping anymore. What does it tell you?
You're right there at the bottom.
You're right there above the bottom.
That's where you need to be.
Yep. A lot of times that's where you need it to be.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, I think of longlining, and I know David kind of remembers it as well as me, but Earl Brink and Kenny Browning came over, and they were from what? Georgia and...
I don't know. That was actually about a year or two before I started fishing, before I started tournament fishing.
Really?
Yeah.
They kind of introduced longline, and they were from the East Coast. And through the years, people said that it was, I put this out in the crappie fishing world, but I didn't. Those
You just
guys,
mastered it.
Well, I don't know about the mastered. I still learn. There's some very good pullers out there that,
Oh, yeah.
you know, didn't get the credit to say that I got, but they came over to Mississippi and they fished Magnolia Crappie Club, and they terrorized us. I mean, they put the whooping on us for a whole full season, and you know, I read everything I could and watched everything, which really wasn't YouTube at the time. There were books and magazines. I looked at everything I could, and I was like, man, there's nothing that says, hey, you need to do it this way. When we took a whole summer off between tournament seasons, and we said, well, how would you actually go about figuring this out? One is you can't jump around bait styles. If you're going to go and try to learn one bait style, and this is, of course, the Bobby Garland stroller, I took it out and said, I'm going to use nothing but a Bobby Garland stroller. All right, I'm going to use nothing but willow leaf blades from 1/32 to a 16th to an 8th, and really fine-tune what I'm doing with this particular setup, because everything's a variable when it comes into crappie fishing, long line trolling. So if you pull a ball head, what's it going to do compared to a willow head?
Oh, it's going to be higher.
It's going to be higher in the water column.
Yeah, even like a 3-inch bait, it's going to go higher in the water column because it's got more buoyancy to it. Line sizes. If you go down in line size, what happens?
Oh, yeah, it's going to drop.
It's going to drop. And I know Lake Hamilton kind of comes to mind to some deep fish. And we didn't do good there.
No, we did not.
But we figured out how to get the jigs down to the baits, to the brush piles. I know the first thing I did once I seen, like, man, these fish are deep on brush, and my typical setups wouldn't get down that deep. Well, we re-spooled to 4-pound test and clear line and threw them back even further and got the baits down to where the fish were. Now, that particular tournament, it wasn't the best technique we figured out, but we figured out variables to make those jigs go down to where they fish were at that time. And I think back to a tournament David actually, he should have won probably.
Probably should. Well, I should have if I wouldn't have let the cat out of the bag.
He let the cat out of the bag. But explain to what happened. And I fished that tournament, and I didn't do as well as David did on that tournament. But
well, that tournament was on Eagle Lake, and, you know, the wind was blowing. It was just a perfect day for a longliner. I mean, the spider riggers were bouncing. Yeah, I forget. It was probably a 15, 16 mile an hour wind. And it was just, I wasn't catching fish. And I just, as far as like longlining tip, I just kept trying different stuff. And how I fell across this was I threw a pole out and I did not flip the bail, just instead of going, and it almost spooled the reel. I could see the bottom of the reel, and I just locked it down, and it went back. Mm-hmm. And then I did the same thing, and it went back. I was like, oh, I'm on to something.
What do you mean when it went back?
Well, whenever the fish bit it, and I was actually going with the wind at 1.6 miles an hour, pulling a double 8.
That's moving.
And when I say a 200 series reel, the line was spooled off of it. I mean, catching fish probably,
I remember seeing the fish come up.
I'm going to say 300 foot behind the boat.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a long way. And then once we were on to something. And so then I took and tied the jigs about 4 foot apart. And that's where we went the next day. And we put 42-pound plus fish in the boat. I think we had a 276 big fish that day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I let the cat out of the bag, which I shouldn't have, and that guy beat me with one kicker.
Yeah. And I think of different tournaments through the years that I even fished that it was some keys, and we always talk about little details when it comes to crappie fishing. And that was a detail that come across there that was unexpected.
No, unexpected. Just
unexpected detail, the unexpected variable that went into place that made a big difference.
And I've tried, you know, to do it again and try it and lose jigs, and then it was just that one day it happened.
What do you think by having those jigs out that far, what did it change up in that presentation?
I don't know. It changed in presentation. They were out, and I mean, there was no boats around. I mean, I guess the boat slap around, and I guess they wasn't spooky, and, you know, pulling that fast, and they were active.
Yeah.
That day.
You know, and it's so fun to go through there and pull a jig, but once you see a bite, and both of you guys have experience in this as well, but what happens once you see a bite on your pole? How do you get that fish in, and how do you know for sure that's a crappie?
So once I get back, you know, once it loads up, they're gone. But my favorite bite on it is when you see that line drop.
Yeah.
When that fish grabs it, he's coming at you. He's full steam ahead. But, you know, we just work the fish up. We won't get the fish to top the water and just try to ski him on in if we can.
Yep.
It just changes depending on where you're at and what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
When you know, talking about how you know it's a fish or crappie, most of the time, as soon as they load up, you pick the post, because we don't ever come out. We come straight up in the air.
Yep.
And when you come in the air, before you ever start reeling, most of the time, we don't have many deep water lakes, so come up, and about the third crank, he's already on top of the water, and you know what it is. And if it goes to digging sideways, you know you are rolling, you've got a catfish. Or
rolling's a digging.
I guess the worst is going through some stripe or white bass. You can get ready to tie everything up then.
Right.
I mean, retie. And, you know, but usually the crappie comes straight up, and then you can steer them through your pole.
Yeah. Especially big white crappie. I mean, black crappie, they're
Black
a little
crappie,
bit
a
meaner
little bit
fighter.
different. Them jokers will take off and they will turn and go sideways.
Yeah.
They will, just like the white bass and stuff,
Right.
they will turn and just get the other way. So it's they can be they could be halfway across the boat before you can pick the rod up.
Oh, yeah. And that's even a little bit, you know, how you can identify fish.
Yep.
You could just about identify before you ever bring it or even see it by how the fish is on the pole. And then David touched on it there, even with a catfish. I knew automatically if I picked that pole up and I see that line twirl,
You knew what you had.
it was a catfish. You might as well just reel it on in. Another, like I said, I've had so many times that people hook a fish and all of a sudden they'll jump up like a bass. You don't think of crappie doing that, but especially when you get a black crappie are notorious on, and white crappie do it just as much on Barnett for sure. But different lakes even had even different fish reaction. Yeah, whenever they would hook, you'd see a fish jump up, 100 foot behind your boat and do a somersault, jump back in the water, and always my clients were like, "Oh, this is a bass," and I just say, "Keep reeling, just keep reeling." The main thing that comes even with that, whenever you hook a fish, you got it up to 12 o'clock, you want a steady retrieve in. You never want to pump a pole.
Yeah.
What happens when you pump a pole?
Oh, yeah, you get that line slack, it's over.
He's gone. If you ever just try to hoist it and reel down, you're over with.
Yeah, you want to keep that pole as steady as possible and steer him.
Yeah.
Pretty much 12 o'clock, all of a sudden he's cutting to your right into your lines. Well, you keep it pretty much back to 11 o'clock then, maybe even at 10 o'clock to kind of steer him through there. And it goes back to using high-vis line. That's why we use high-vis line as well, is to steer them back into the boat. Along that same thing is tangles happen.
Yep.
I like that same concept as alternating the line colors from high-vis or different color high-vis even.
Absolutely.
Just to untie them. I did that a lot, especially in tournaments. The everyday deal is I can a lot of times cut them and retie them faster than sitting there and trying to untangle things. But what's your typical setup when it comes to long line and knots are you going to use?
So my setup, I'll start out with my shortest rod that I'm going to run is a 10-foot rod.
Yeah.
And then I'll stage out, depending on where I'm at and what the rod limit is, I'll run anywhere from 8 up to 16 rods pulling.
16 rods.
16 rods. So we'll run 8 out the back, and then we'll run 4 out each corner of the front.
Good God.
When we're on the fish, it can be fun.
Oh, it's like a fire station. Everybody trying to get out of there to the fire truck.
Most of the time, it ends up being about 12 to 14 rods. But if you've got if you got people in the boat that's used to doing their customers, a lot of my customers are repeats. Kind of like you guys are. They're used. That's what they want to come get. They want to fish a certain way.
Yeah.
A lot of my customers could care less about live scope. They want to go. They want to go see the rod bend, sit back, and have fun with friends and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So we'll run that way, and I'll go up to a 16-foot rod.
Yeah.
And we'll stagger them out, but usually it's around 12 rods is what we're running most of the time.
David?
My shortest rod is a 10-foot
Yeah.
to 16, which I no more than 8. I run them across the back of the boat. They're not double pole holders. I've got a bar across, so I'm getting 2-foot line separation with pole, and then I've got they're not close. They're staggered all the way across, so I'm actually trying to get 3.5 foot of line separation between.
Kind of like a, you think of a spider leg.
Yeah. It is like a spider leg off the back, but I'm using that bar to space the pole holders out more.
Right. So there might be 2-foot differences in poles, but they're set 1.5 foot or foot apart, so you're getting more
line separation.
I'm still kind of trying to figure out the 16 poles at a time.
I know.
God.
Come on out to East Coast. I'll show you how to do it. So I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Have y'all ever seen when you're pulling, y'all were talking about line separation.
Yeah.
Have y'all ever seen where it makes a difference of having those rods 18 inches apart and pulling those jigs to where they're 8-10 inches apart and catch more fish. Have y'all seen the difference in that?
I have not. I have never tried to pull them that.
You need to try that.
Really?
You get some more tangles, but
I guess it's like more attraction comes.
It's more attraction. If you get it through there and you pull it, you're making that presentation of bait tighten up.
Yeah.
So there's days that I know I'm going through the fish and they lay off. We'll take them rods and we'll roll them in to where they're, when he hits it, you got to get him and get him up. Or if not, he's taking everything. But that's just some tricks that we've done. It's actually started putting a few more fish in the boat.
I've never heard that one.
I've never done that.
I've never done. I've always tried to spread them out as much as I could.
I try to get them far apart as I can.
We've put them to where they're 10 inches apart.
Huh. I have learned something new today on Crappie Connection. Well, guys, I want to definitely, I got a couple more tricks I'm going to let out of the bag, but if you're still listening and watching, make sure you turn your notifications on and subscribe. It takes every one of you guys to make this thing keep on growing and keep on going. So while you're there, go ahead and hit thumbs up. Appreciate you guys, but I know another little trick that I'm going to let out of the bag that I never talked about when I fished tournaments and long line. And I know Shane experienced it with me whenever he came fish with me that time, but it was the twisting of a boat. How key can that be?
Very, not very. I mean, I've done it, because whenever you twist a boat, I mean, especially when you're searching for the fish, can't find them or going slow, you're dropping baits, and that actually helps me with my speed. Because if I can drop them, well, I am going to. I mean, like one side, say if I turn to the left and the pole's on the left, if I get bit, okay, I need to be deeper, I'm going too fast. But if I turn to the left and they bite on the right side of the boat, when they come up, hey, that's what I'm wanting to see, because I'm going to put it faster.
And kind of go, what happened on that right side, the opposite side of the turn, it made those baits do what?
They sped up and come higher in the water column.
So what did that tell you?
The fish were a little higher and they wanted it faster.
That's how you really broke down on bites, or I always did, on how to catch fish in the depth range. Because people ask us, how do you know how deep to fish those? And if you start twisting your boat and you pay attention to that detail, it was a telltale sign on, hey, I need to change up, I need to speed up, or I need to slow down and go deeper. So it taught a whole lot just by twisting the boat.
Just by moving the trolling motor head.
Yeah, I remember the day that when we went out with Brad and fishing the first time, we was going through there, and we were running straight, and he said, all right, guys, y'all hold tight. He'd kick that boat, 4 rods will lay back. We get fish in. He said, all right, get ready. Left side, he twists that boat, bam, it was on. And I remember going through, there was 12 or 15 guys out there tight lining. He said, all right, we're going to have some fun. And those guys, we watched them for 4 hours, catch a couple fish, and we worked through them, and it was as fast as we could get the rods in the boat.
I mean, I've probably had through the years some people kind of say some ugly words about me by coming through areas. But you think about that, if you sit out there and you're not making these adjustments, that's what's going to happen.
That's right.
And regardless of what technique you're doing, if you're sitting out there and you're not catching fish and you're not trying things, you're fishing.
And until you nail them down, I mean, you can't worry about baits. You can't worry about jig heads. I mean, just different style baits, which there's 3 baits that I normally run when I was fishing. I fish with the Strollars, and I fish with the Strike King Slabalicious and the Shad Pole CT, the curly tail. But I didn't go to a store and buy 1 pack of baits. I would buy them like 5 at a time because, once I take a color off, it's gone. I mean, and you're liable to go through 20 or 30 different colors. And I've seen where putting crappie nibbles on it helped me. Different stuff.
I think Shane's actually got a funny story about that day when he fished with me about it.
Yeah, we had a little fun that day. It was actually pretty interesting. Old Brandon, we got him pretty good. I've never seen somebody tear a boat apart looking for a pack of crappie nibbles. And when I say tear a boat apart, we were 60, 70 feet beside of him. and he had every compartment, every bag, everything laid out on the deck, looking for a pack of crappie nibbles.
Yeah. And kind of set that back. Brandon Fulgham, me and him fished tournaments together for years, and we were actually at the same lake fishing that day, and we come by him and we were catching fish, and he hadn't got dialed into them yet, and he was calling me up and he's like, man, what are you doing over there? And I said, man, we got some crappie nibblers on right now. And he's like, you serious? I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. I said, I put a couple containers in your boat, which I didn't, which was, the funny part. Because we were like, oh, yeah, he's fishing to dig this, throw this boat apart looking for him. And sure enough, we'd see him over there, open one compartment, you'd see stuff fly out, and he'd keep on looking for a minute, and then he'd call me up, what compartment were they in? And it was hilarious watching that kind of thing. But that's fun stuff.
Man, that was, like you talked about, man, the brotherhood, the camaraderie in it, man. That was probably one of mine, and I know Newell's too, one of our favorite fishing trips is we spent a couple days with you, then went to Grenada and spent a couple days with him, and man, we learned so much. It's a different part of the country, and we took the things we learned from you and applied them different, kind of like the boat, shaking the rear of that boat. We took that home and started applying it, and it was instant, because we were used to watching everybody long line. You'd see everybody, but most of them straight line, speed. We start shaking it, and we started creating some magic then. Yeah,
and even once you kind of figure out, some days they just want those baits to speed up and slow down.
Yep.
It triggers, and we see it now with live sonar that there's a lot of fish that follow baits all the time.
Oh yeah.
And we see it with live scope. If they see those baits now speed up, that's usually when you'll get a bite. And I think that's a lot of times what was happening. Looking back was we had fish following baits, and all of a sudden they would see those baits speed up, and they would smoke it.
And even watching with the live scope, you hardly ever see one once they get to following. If you stop that bait,
he's gone.
He's gone. So I think looking back, long line, they liable to chase it forever before they actually decide to hit it.
Yeah.
It's just going to be that one little movement in the boat, even a turn or something when that bait speeds up, then that's when you'll get the bite.
That's right. This technique, if you're getting into crappie fishing, you definitely want to check it out. Make sure you go out there and try it. I could put, and I still can, put anybody in my boat from, as long as they can hold a fishing pole and hold it in and crank it in, they can catch fish. And that was so much fun. I took a gentleman one time that was like 94 years old. Now, I will be honest, he tangled a lot of lines bringing them in.
Yep.
But he was able to get in the back of my boat, catch fish throughout the day, and we had a blast doing it. So you can take really anybody and do this technique and catch fish. And I can tell you right now, there's guys that just come with me still today to long line troll. And matter of fact, one of them's Bo Cephas. I don't say that much on the show as far as him, but Bo Cephas loves long line and jigs. If he can get in the back of my boat and pull jigs, that's what he wants to do.
That's right. Yeah, and like I say, it goes back to most of the stuff, with me guiding. I do I'm going to say 98% of my trips are going to be tight lining or long lining. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Fish and brush in the summer. We're not actively we're not casting to them. We're fishing, and that's what my customers like to do. They like to go out there, sit back with their friends, and enjoy fishing. Watch that pole in the front either get hammered or watch that one get doubled up, laid back.
Up.
Yeah, there's nothing like watching that 16-footer lay back, take it across, and not stop.
Yeah.
So
definitely check out this technique, guys. Hopefully we gave you a few little pointers today. And like I said, I know both of these guys are really good at this technique. That's why I wanted them on here to do this with me today. So make sure you like, subscribe. Brad Chappell here. We will do some more stuff. No live scope. No live scope needed on this.
Nope, absolutely not.
Right.
Appreciate you, David.
No problem.
Appreciate you,
Absolutely.
Shane. Till next time, you got Brad Chappell here.
David McWilliams.
Shane Walser.
Holla.
See ya.
About a mile from Big Muddy River, a place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel